Introduction. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to my podcast. I'm Christian Delgado. This is Zeta Reticuli, episode number 7. And today I have the pleasure to be with Stuart. He is the founder, co-founder, right, of Viltrix.
I'm the only founder.
Only founder. Okay, only founder, CEO, AI expert. We met and connect through LinkedIn, and I think was through a publication someone else did. I comment something, and I feel kind of like what you commented was my aligned to my thinking. So I decided to connect with you and then invite you to this podcast. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure. It's all mine.
Yeah, you were before you were asking me a question. Could you repeat it for the?
Oh gosh, I can't. The question was about the use of AI, because ultimately we were briefly talking about some people are heavily invested, some people are kind of don't even want to touch it, and my question was back to you was why do you feel that there's like 5-10% of the population are really heavily, very much jumping on board with AI, not just rappers or SaaS toys or something like that. They're really, really heavily invested, billions of pounds being invested in AI infrastructure, governance, and the such like toys, rappers, you name it. Whereas the rest of the population have just completely not touched it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it's a really important question, and it's the type of topics I would like to go deep. As I tell you previously, I'm telecommunication engineer, so I have the engineering background. My family, all they are engineers. But later, here in Taiwan, I study economics. And then I went deep in the economics, anthropology, psychology, and then now I do like marketing and communication. And I think now I'm in the middle of these two areas, and what I see is a phenomenon called the course knowledge. Basically, like experts like you or those guys that are investing heavily, they have the knowledge of the potential of the thing, and they actually using it by themselves, and they keep reinforcing, because it's a circle, right? So all their friends, all their partners, all their employees are this level of expertise, but they are not aware that why people quite not get it, and why the people haven't jumped into the level they are. I don't know if this part is clear enough, what I try to explain.
Yeah, no, of course. For me, my perspective was that, so if I give you a little bit of backstory about me personally,
Sure.
How I got into AI, etc., because my background, I retired from, I was a recruiter for Magic Circle or Magic and Silver Circle law firms. So I was the recruiter that they went to when their own teams couldn't find people that they were looking for. So I did exceptionally well from that side of things, recruiting for the Magic Circle and Silver Circle law firms. 8 years of solid work for those guys meant I could actually retire 6 years ago. So I retired from all things work related about 6 years ago, just prior to COVID, actually, when that started. And I actually bought 15 acres of woodland, went off grid, no electricity, no TV, no radio, no newspapers.
Yeah.
Literally just kind of bimbled out into the desert to some degree, and decided I wasn't coming back.
The hippie way.
And and then in truth, I love it. I'll give you a brief look at my view in a second. I don't know
Okay, that will be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see some green. Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah, that's great. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I've got 15-acre woodland. I've got world-class views. I'm very, very super thankful for my sort of the previous me to some degree. And I decided upon retiring that I was going to actually, because I was a very good researcher. You give me a laptop and a phone, and I can find a single needle anywhere across the planet. It was just a gift that I always had. I was very, very good, very analytical mind, very much kind of combined with a common sense mind, I guess, you know, a basic level kind of common sense strapped with huge amounts of kind of other bits and bobs. So when I retired, I researched all sorts of stuff, esoteric religions, who we are, where we are. And then I started playing with AI because I was intrigued by it, right? I was just literally intrigued about what this noise was that most people were making about this product. Because I've always been aware that artificial intelligence is not really artificial intelligence. We're talking about algorithmic code or binary code that's just improved to such an extent that it literally can do most things now. But it still needs human programming behind it to get it to where it is, irrespective of whether people believe that or not. I'm not really interested, but fundamentally, it can't make a cup of tea without you programming it how to make a cup of tea. Okay,
you need to feed it at the end.
Yeah. And whether you like that cup of tea is a different kettle of fish to go there. So I was aware. So I started playing with AI, and because of the nature of my mind, I asked it to design itself or redesign itself straight off the bat several years ago. So when I first started playing with various chat GPTs and the such like, my initial intrigue was, well, what can you do? You know, what's the boundary? What's the limitations? Why is the drift coming in? So I then learned rhetoric, different frameworks, metaphorical, canonical, you know, you name it. It literally, this is why we can see so many, shall we say, disagreements or contradictions when a user is, say, a religious person and they're asking their AI about certain things within religion. It will then continue to feed that rhetoric. So then you get somebody else completely somewhere else talking to their AI that's then kind of then agreeing with what they're talking about. So it's kind of, this is the bit that a lot of people are fairly shocked about, is that AI is actually a very good mirror or representation of how a human mind operates. It's just so much faster. Then we look at the programming behind the inference. So the companies OpenAI, Anthropic, and their coders and the such like that are actually coding these or coding the data sets into the different kind of machine learning. You then look at, well, why is there a difference between a standard Grok and a standard ChatGPT? Just, you know, maybe 2 years ago, not so much now, but when they were first kind of becoming a bit more prominent, what is the main difference? And it's like, well, they're all running off the same data sets to some degree, but yet if you were to ask 4 separate people to code something, so typically the end result is vaguely the same, but the pathways how they got there would be very different. So whether it be a basic coding project or whether it be an extremely heavy sort of coded project, there's a very strong chance that all of the pathways are going to be completely different because they're doing their own thing. And this is where I realized that there's intention that goes into the inference. Whether they programmed it that way or not, that's actually an outcome that already occurs. So we call it at the moment in regards to where if your settings are not, you're training the model over the last couple of years by your own individual use. So you're programming something that's already technically programmed, that's already running on a data set. So it's learning, it's constantly learning and improving, hence why Anthropic is seeing all of the world's best coders sort of gravitating towards Anthropic, and OpenAI is going in a slightly different direction, more consumery kind of sort of stuff. So you then get an idea that the actual programmers behind Anthropic are actually dripping out to some extent within the code and the projects that Anthropic is feeding to the customers. So I've been very kind of, because of the way I think, I guess, and because I'm not distracted by noise, kind of other things going on in my life, I was able to, so I basically spent about a year non-stop iterating with AI, training it, seeing it, what it can do, boundary levels, then creating products. So I then created something called a systemic engine, while I was merging frontier models. I'm sure it's just starting to creep out now, whereby some of the LLM kind of sort of frontier kind of organizations are aware that that's where things are going, is actually combination of a systemic sort of engine behind it. So you're not necessarily getting a single opinion, you're getting a multitude. So I've I've literally deep dived into AI to such a level whereby it became natural of a systems architect.
Yeah. Yes.
It was actually ChatGPT that told me last November. I never asked it because I'd formed the company. I was then going through the products. And actually since then, I've kind of really stripped the products back to basics. I've validated certain things. You know, is this noise? Is this a bit founder rhetoric or whatever? Is this a bit too far for the public to sort of see too early? Because I've got huge R&D departments now that are running simply on AI. Yes. So I've got 100 war rooms, and I call them war rooms. And this is I'm letting the secret out a little bit now in regards to how my thinking is. Most people ask one AI to do loads of jobs. I spun that and asked loads of AI to do one job. So it naturally kind of ticks the box on governance, how they kind of get to truth, how they become. So I've bypassed the limitations on the data sets. They're constantly scanning online. I've asked them to bypass, shall we say, kind of mainstream narratives. So I asked the AI. Yeah, well, here's the thing. So typically when we look at, shall we say, so first principles in regards to training data sets, designing data centers and the such like, I realized that we're limited by only the science that we're currently using within the world that we currently talk about. But what about the physics and science from 150, 200 years ago that's been kind of either buried or kind of just ignored?
Totally agree with that part, and I would like to comment on that because few weeks ago I talked with a friend about it. I told him my thinking, and maybe we are aligned in that. I told him, like, right now we are in a technological path that is not necessarily the only technological path that exists. Just happened that's the mainstream, the establishment of technological path that we know that exists, and everyone jumps in and everyone's go call in those programming language. Everyone create applications for those type of iPhones or Android phones, but no, there's no and to explain this, I told him a really blunt and like a physical way to put it. I told him, imagine Soviet Union didn't collapse and they continue to develop their own technological path. Everything what they do probably would be alternative phones, but maybe the name would be other thing. And they came out with computers as well, but it will look different. The functions probably will be different. The programming language will be different. The design itself will be different. Probably before we have those TVs with vacuum, and then we have transistors, but maybe those guys will develop other things that we don't even imagine. So there's a way to create things like a little like alternative from the technological path that we're currently in. But what happened is like everyone is so immersive on this because they're huge, right? There's a lot of money there, and of course when you need to have a job, that's the way. But if you want to create something, it's better you follow your own technological path than try to follow theirs and compete against theirs, because they're always going to win. Of course, they have more money, more resources, and they have the expertise in that technological path. But if there's a way to deviate and create your own technological path, nobody can beat you, because now you are the original in that path. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's what you're trying to to share,
Yeah,
because when you say physics that 1,000 years ago, but no need to be that far. 100 years ago, the physics is way different than the physics we learn at
yeah,
school. So
but the great thing about the physics is that so I trained my models to ignore whatever. So if they were told to ignore certain things by mainstream narratives, shall we say, I told them to ignore that consensus and go and actually verify and validate themselves.
okay, I understand. Yeah,
So
it's for example, when we came with a formula that everyone assumes, like a string theory, for example, everyone assumed that's the way, and everyone keep putting more theories over a theory that nobody challenged. So now you're stuck in that narrative. But if you say, okay, be cynic, be critic on this precise moment, and then find alternative, you are in
well,
another
a
technological path.
a funny one that analogy that works on that is gravity, right? Because it's still actually
Yeah,
technically a theory. It's
yeah,
just a term
yeah,
that we've associated to how something falls out of the sky, but gravity doesn't necessarily kind of speak for how a feather can kind of do this in the
yeah.
sky, how
It's
birds can
totally
fly.
different.
We
Yeah,
just agreed on a terminology, and it's still
yeah,
technically a theory. So
yeah,
to go back to some of the things, so I was very aware that sort of this time last year that some of the things that I was asking AI to do was off the chart. It would, you know, because most people, when you look at a problem, my thinking is to because everything's about perspective.
mhm,
You know, where someone's physical view of something is. A lot of most people literally form an opinion based on what they can physically see themselves. Whereas I
yeah,
always attack a problem from 6 to 8 different directions. I never come at it always at the same focus point, because my focus point or my perspective towards something is always going to be slightly different if you're stood on the other side of something looking at it. I think there's a great video where there's a black and white ball on a desk and two blokes are arguing. One's going, it's black, it's black, it's black. And the other guy's going, no, it's white, it's white, it's white. It's
yeah,
because their perspective, they can't see the other side.
yeah.
So
And
I've always,
other similar to that is like when there's like so many, like a black room or a dark room, is an elephant in it, and there's people around and they start touching, and they say, oh, it's a tree, maybe it's touching a leg, and the other is touching other part, but nobody
yeah.
came
Well,
out to know the big picture.
well, let me give you an even better one than that. I was talking to an expert on AI designs, quantum computing. I
Mm.
think he had 3 or 4 PhDs in a multitude of kind of heavy hitting sort of areas. And he was talking about the difference between quantum computing and a standard AI compute that was actually trying to find its way around a maze. So they've got this massive maze whereby there's only obviously one pathway, and the single AI was like take 30 minutes, for example, and would flood every sort of lane to then find the route and would then be able to do it. And then the
Mhm.
quantum computer almost flooded the screen almost instantly, and it took about 10 minutes. But wait for
Okay, I
this,
understand.
right? So I
Yeah,
turned round to the guy that was giving this speech, and I said, well, could you not give a photograph top down of the maze to your quantum computer or your AI, and it could work out the path instantly? It wouldn't need to go in standing like a human inside a maze trying to work its way out. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, this brings us back to perspective. You're
yes,
treating an intelligence as if it's a
yeah,
standing body in a maze. You're not
yeah.
thinking that
No
body can
needed.
start. Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't need
no
to.
need
It
to
can
do
look
that.
over
No
the
need to
top.
do that.
Yeah,
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 this
exactly. But
this
this brings me back to people's perspectives,
yeah,
because
it's
they're
flip.
only looking
Yeah,
at it. They're
yeah.
literally looking
It's
at
on
something
their own
from
perspective.
their perspective.
Yeah,
So this is
and
how I'm acutely aware that when you're training models, when you're programming, how this is how the intentions from the programmers can drip feed into the inference, because if, say, for example, 15 white lab humans that are programming a computer all come from the same consensus as that guy that was a
Yes,
PhD
yes,
guy, they're
yes,
never going to
yes.
look at it from a different perspective.
Exactly, because they are in the box, they are in the
Yeah,
maze, they're
exactly,
in the maze,
exactly.
they are not outside the maze just because they choose to be in that perspective, because
Yeah, of
clearly
course, of course.
they are creating the maze and creating the AI, and it's just to put the camera above.
Yeah, exactly. And that simple
Yeah,
thing really threw the argument. They didn't know how to respond to that, because I don't know whether they're like, well, you can't just give it a photo. I went, well, why not? Why can't you just, because I can feed photos into mine and it can read that photograph as if it's seeing it like I am.
yeah,
You
and
know, in
immediately know
fact, that's,
the answer.
yeah, but here's something funny. You can actually take a photograph of something that you would struggle to see yourself, the writing on the screen, but yet the AI can see it, because it has a better contextual flow on the color screens and certain things. So
Okay.
there's there's a multitude of perspectives that I'm aware that most people aren't really thinking about. So
But this is related with what is happening now with this Chinese AI as well, because the guy basically, the Kimi AI CEO or founder, I don't know, he basically say it's not because the AI is better, it's just we
pick the
arrange what
team
is
behind it.
inside differently. Yeah, yeah. Basically,
Yeah, but
he clearly said.
but he dropped it in a very small amount. If you noticed it, he was talking about making sure that the team that are programming or working with that specific product, that is the most important thing that you should look at, not the product itself. And
Yeah,
perfect. That guy knows so much about AI, a lot
yeah,
more than other people do, because he's the first person that I've seen online talk about the team programming the AI. And he was hinting towards their intentions and who the team is.
yeah.
And because I advise, I don't know how this worked out. I just naturally kind of became some form of AI consultant without really kind of wanting to be an AI consultant. So when I talk to people in regards to companies that are actually setting up their own AI, or they're looking at doing certain things, one of the biggest things I say is, who's going to be your kind of team allocation that deals with the AI within the organization? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, it's actually, it's more important than anything else that you do with the AI about who has the contact with it, who programs it
Basically,
for the rest of the team to
basically,
work on.
yeah. Basically, you're asking who's gonna do the thinking. That's the
Yeah, but
question.
this is the thing that a lot of people realize, is that the AI is a mirror of the
Yeah,
programmer. It
yeah,
literally is mirroring what you're asking it. This is why I say to you that 4 separate coders can literally play with AI to build something, or even code something separately, but they would all kind of do it in their own unique way of how they were
yes.
trained, how they were taught, their perspectives. So that reflection
Yeah,
that we get. Go on. No, you were going to say something.
yeah. A simple example to support your point. When all this AI started, like let's say 3 years ago, I don't know, 2022,
21 was the
I don't
first
know.
time it kind of
Yeah,
dropped.
yeah. When it drops, and there were
Yeah.
some guys like testing, and maybe 8 months in, there was a YouTube video that the guy they were generating images, and there was a girl that she have zero experience in photography, zero experience in art, and the guy is a professional photographer majoring art or something like that. So when they prompt, of course she generate a decent image of what they want to have. But when
Yeah.
he did it with all his knowledge of art major, photography perspective, shadow and stuff,
Yeah.
the quality of the picture of the image that they get back was so much better than hers. So
Yeah.
that's a perfect example to see it right away in something so simple. And
Well,
now imagine solving
iterations.
issues and programming, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
security, everything.
as a user, we call it prompting and iteration and script writing and such like. But from our user end point of view, um, it's not just the skills and the knowledge and the experience. It is actually the personal intentions of that human. So if you take someone that's really nice, really caring, within an organization, is always does anything for anyone else and never asks anything back, always there, you know, every office has got one, right? And then you take the one that's selfish, is always going home at night early, doesn't really respond to kind of team collaboration as much as he should do or her should do. By comparison, the difference in regards to the outcomes, even though, say, for example, they were both extremely qualified, exactly the same, they knew exactly the same about photography, they knew exactly the same about this, that, and the other, they would still word the iterations from their own personal intentions.
Yes.
And in response to that, so for example, one might be more polite, might actually even throw in the occasional rhetoric of things like please and thank you, right? Because this is how the AI actually picks up on personal intentions from its programmer. Because if you try and strip all human rhetoric out completely, say for example, you've got a multi-agent system, right? But the way in which that I play with AI is that I will have 2 to 3 systems stacked on top of each other. One is like a design studio, an iteration kind of war room whereby they design, plan, structure the prompts, the scripts, the whole kind of thing, and then they feed that into, shall we say, a builder system that then distributes that down to a system that's actually interactive with the outside world. And then that loops back round to the top side, whereby feedback, tweaking, user feedback, user complaints, you know, kind of version 2, version 3. So it can actually self-learn from what the consumer is actually doing with the product, and it can then re-establish that back into the chain. But if you try and remove, well, not try, if you actually strip out complete rhetoric and any form of human metaphorical kind of conversation by any way, or forms of opinions, and you literally strip it out, because the way I learned this was I was programming different AI with JSON code or different code levels. So rather than speaking in language, I was actually running everything through JSON code to kind of, this was when I was playing back when sort of token limitation was a bit kind of a lot limited by comparison to now. So instead of having sort of standard conversation, token window burns and all this sort of stuff, I was trying to limit the amount of rhetoric and metaphorical noise that was actually kind of getting into the sort of feeds. And I noticed that by stripping it out, it has to re-add it in at some point. It literally, the system, it cannot, it really struggles to cope without any form of human guidance. And when I say human guidance, I mean to how it wants to act, how it wants to kind of, because put it this way, on that triple multi-agent system.
Like, to support you here, it's like the machine doesn't know where we're going. The human does. Basically, the machine needs to be directed, and she can do it. Whatever you say, whatever you imagine, whatever you system put in place to function and interact each other, it will do it. But as long as you tell it to do it.
Yeah, of course.
And how to do it, and how you want it to do it. Otherwise, you left many doors open for the AI take decisions or hallucinations in pathway that you maybe don't want. And sometimes I feel what they doing, like the companies, and that's why ChatGPT, Gemini, all those guys have so much hallucination, is because they're trying to reduce the human input. That's why they have more hallucinations, because the AI is asking you less questions and he's taking those decisions for you, because
and it's trying to fill the gaps, right? It's trying to fill the gaps.
Yeah. That's exactly. And what happened is they had to do that because the current user level, the average user of these AIs, are not as skilled as they would prefer, as you or as some of coworkers I have. Even me, I try to be a little more specific, maybe not at the level of you do, like with a JSON or some programming level, but I try to write a markdown, like be specific and drop it what exactly I want. And of course, I have way better results than people that just say something general, and then I do something and they write again, and then they have this back and forth. Or sometimes they write something like 20% good, and the AI start taking decisions, and then you have all these bulky results and little clumsy or hallucination and stuff like that. And people blame the AI, but at the same time,
It's
it's
not
like
AI, it's the human user. It's always been the human
yeah,
user. It has always
yeah,
been the human behind
yeah,
the mirror, on the mirror.
yeah.
Hence why it picks up on rhetoric, metaphorical frameworks, different placebo thinking thoughts, and it kind of gravitates towards wherever you're wanting to go. But that, I think, just comes down to how many people know that, right? How many people know that it's a reflection of what you're putting into it? That
They don't know.
really is that's the truth behind this
This
artificial
is
intelligence sort of
this
run.
is the problem. They don't know, and some people even, uh, let's say that's for a really engineering utilitarian perspective, but in people they don't know this is already bad. And now imagine they don't know this, and they ask the AI psychology questions, relationship questions, where if a couple have a fight, maybe the guy or the girl will ask the AI from her perspective, and the AI will give the reason to him.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
that's a bias. The AI always gonna be biased towards you because
Yeah,
you only fit in your perspective. The AI cannot
unless
know unless you know the is and you fit
well,
all the context. But
it,
to be honest,
that
people
does
don't
depend
do
on,
it.
say, for example, if the female was to go, I'm struggling with me and my partner are having problems. Can you help us both? So her questioning is gone in. So rather than being he's an arsehole or she's an arsehole or whatever, and
Yeah,
so to
but that
remove,
doesn't
yeah, but
happen.
no, I know, but to sort of kind of like play the safety ground here. If you were to ask, so this is why it's a reflection, a mirror of the user, because it will literally give you what you're asking for. And
Yes.
it kind of works out roughly the words that you're going to be using after the words that you're using. So it has kind of, there's a few limitations to its uses in that regards, because it's preempting what you're all going to be saying. So it's got a preloaded data set going on in the background that it's kind of
Yes.
preloading in
Yes.
readiness to answer the question.
Yeah.
But
So
this is
some
where
silly. Yeah.
go on.
Tell me.
No, go on.
No, some silly interaction I had with ChatGPT. Like I think the first version. In my country, I'm from Nicaragua, by the way. In my
Yeah,
country, we have a famous writer that is Ruben Darillo. He is like a modernist writer. He would write poems and stuff like that. Really important in Spanish language. The point is like there's a poem that is called Blue. So I asked, no, there's no a poem called Blue. There's a book called Blue, and it's a
yeah.
book of poems. So I asked
Okay.
the AI, give me the poem called Blue from this author. And he gave me a poem, and I know the poem doesn't exist because what exists is a book called Blue,
Yeah,
and happens that it's like a perfect name poem as well. Yeah, sure, no problem.
that's right. Umbrella fell over. So it's I'm fascinated with AI. I rarely have conversations with people that have a level of understanding, even some real geniuses online that are kind of doing some. I mean, Linus, for example, that I think he's from Lithuania, and I forget his second
Mhm.
name. Huge talent within the realm of AI, knows so much stuff. but yeah, I'm still finding that there's so many people that really don't fully understand what it is they're dealing with.
They don't understand.
When people say, where is AI going? Well, I can answer that very easily. It's everything and anything you want it to be.
Yes.
If you can think of it, it will do it.
But the thing is, like, people concerns. Let's talk a little bit about general public.
Okay.
And I work with the market a lot, so that's basically my job, and need to be screening right how the people in which level they are. That way you can market it or communicate your thing, your agent or your service in a way that kind of understand what this can do for you. Otherwise they don't know, they think it's not possible. So what you just say for them is too abstract, it's too complicated, it's not too complicated, too far away. They think it's too far away than actually is. And this is number one. Number two, people are concerned that they're gonna lose their jobs because the
Yeah.
AI will take over. So that's a concern in the general public as well. You can give your comment on this, and I can give you the third concern is like, if we lose our jobs,
I think it's in,
that
I think personally, I think it's
uh-huh.
naturally, I think, yeah, the AI will revolutionize the working playing field across the globe. There is no doubt about that.
Already did.
Pardon?
Already did in some degree.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
yeah,
it's a benefit at all to certain elements. I think a lot of people are arguing over how it's incorporated, how we govern it. Do we just let it loose? Which you can't
yeah.
let anything loose.
Rails.
Yeah, I mean, think
Don't give
about it another way, right?
the
If you
use
work for a big four
access.
firm, so
Mhm.
if you work for KPMG, right, for example's sake, let's just pick a big four accounting firm, and they're looking at incorporating AI. The way that they should be looking at it is like an employee. Okay,
Yes.
so would you go and would KPMG go out into the market, hire a partner for a specific sort of sector within their market share or whatever that has no training whatsoever other than a maths degree? Of course they're not. They want a
Yeah.
partner that's got experience. They want a partner that's able to do certain things.
Yeah.
So we have to look at AI almost like an employee to a certain degree, or a tool within the realm.
Yes.
That it's not just something that's going to go and mow the lawn without you doing anything to ask it to, because it literally has got to have guidance. It's got to know what the business is. It's got to know everything as much. So there's some limitations. When I think about the general public, there is a lot of scares, the scare stories,
Myth.
scaremongering.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are waiting, not just about their employment, but there's all this kind of, the CEO of OpenAI has got dark entities surrounding him
Oh
and
yeah,
all
yeah,
this.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
another level too. Like
So there's another level. So
let's
everyone's
say.
talking about
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
AI is actually a negative or a nefarious force for control and all of this sort of stuff. But they're only coming from their perspective of where their energy is flowing. So when they're talking about, oh, it's bad, it's this is what I say to it, it's everything and anything.
Yeah.
AI is quite
Yeah.
literally anything and everything that 7 billion people can think of.
Yeah.
So
But the thing
it,
is, like, the AI itself doesn't produce output. The human need to uh, guide to that output be created. So the employee or the companies, they can buy or get the best AI and the data centers, all that, but without the right people doing this part, they
yeah,
won't get the outputs. Output therefore produce and give the products and services they need to do to sell and be a normal company or profitable. So at the end, I think there are changes in the market, of course. For example, one change I see in this level I am is like, in the future, maybe the work of 10 people will be reduced as 2 or 1, because now you don't need big teams and one single guy can do more with the AI or with several AIs, let's say graphic design and also the web page, and can do landing pages and several stuff. So you reduce the teams. That is something that we need to face. It will happen, but at the same time, as reduced teams will increase other new type of employees, and this type of employees is the one that they bring their own AI, in the sense of either I have my LLM small model or my small project I built to do my job better. Let give you. I want to give you an example. I'm business developer and also marketer. So I do marketing and the other thing. And to find more leads, more potential partners to work with us, I need to send thousands of emails. But thousands of emails, I need to be like personalized. I cannot do it one by one. It's like impossible, right? And also, I need to find thousands of contacts. So I did with AI. I built a small tool. I call it Rich Scraper. What it does is like I just write the niche of the type of company I want, in which area, let's say Miami, and then I want 100 leads, and he will get me those companies exactly. For example, I don't know, travel agencies. So I write travel agency and I get 100 travel agencies, and I will get all the emails of those guys. And then in my tool, I can click one of the one I want and say, okay, find me the decision maker of this travel agency, and he will give me all this. So I build the tool. Right now it's my tool, and I can sell it. If someone buys it, it's like, okay, richscraper.com, just buy it. And or if I need job, I can go to other job interview to other company, and I will say I have this so much experience, and I have my tool that I can do the outreaching job better because I have my tool already. Like back in the day, remember there was a trend to I remember, I don't know, 2015 or 2012, I don't even remember. Like there's like bring your own device, but that didn't kind of happen actually. Some levels maybe yes, but at the end there were security issues and probably didn't happen. But it's like bring your own device instead of bring your own devices, bring your own AI tool or your own tool to do that job. And that company will say, oh, okay, I will work with this guy because have everything and this guy doesn't have anything, or doesn't know how to use it.
Let me throw a spanner in there. So you employ 10 people for your company, right? And you say to each 10 people that work for you, you can bring your own tool. And as an office, when I used to work with staff and have like lots and lots of staff, I was very much I'm not a stickler for time. I'm not a stickler for people not talking in the office. I don't give a shit personally, as long as you get the work done. Say if you're that good at what you do, if it takes you 10 minutes a day. But my question to you is it the employer's kind of naivety that he doesn't realize he can probably actually incorporate AI into his business structure? Because if he employs, yeah, I know, but this is the thing: if you employ 10 people and they're literally not working, and they're each running an AI that each does their own jobs, is it the employer that's naive not to employ 10 AI as opposed to kind of employing 10 people that bring their own AI product? So yeah, that's a question I think for maybe in a year, 2 years time, 5 years time. I think at the moment it's very important that people understand what it is, and what it isn't, what it's not going to replace. I can't really see any sort of realm where AI is not going to be kind of incorporated. It literally looks as if it's kind of going into every single job, every single sector, every single kind of market, you name it. It's kind of being used in some way or another. There is obviously a question of should we be incorporating AI into absolutely everything of our daily lives, i.e., for me personally, I don't think we should bring any form of artificial intelligence into a classroom for children.
Yeah,
Um,
100% agree with you.
these
In that
robotics
case,
that
they
are
need
acting.
to develop their own critical thinking,
Yeah,
learn
I think
about
children.
writing. Yep,
Well,
yep. Be
think about it
children.
another way. As
Yep,
humans, we need connections, right? We need to make
yep,
connections with other
yep.
humans.
Yes.
So if someone's, I mean, this is how I went from recruiting for accountants at the big four firms to recruiting lawyers at law firms. Accountants are locked in cupboards all day, bean counting, doing numbers. So the minute you talk to them on the telephone, it's like, shit, someone's asked me some questions. Great, I can put everything down. And then just, it's like no one talks to me. So they're now like literally flooded. Whereas lawyers, it's almost expected that you know what they're capable of doing. They don't need to have a discussion like an accountant does, because it's more about rapport building,
Okay.
building a relationship personally, that connection with them. So when it brings me on to AI and we're talking about classrooms, robotics, then we should have a question about whether we should be using these tools in absolutely every kind of sector, every single, because people that are building robotics, they don't care where these things end up, just as long as they sell them. This is the thing about the corporate world, that when there's not really that much restriction on whether we should or shouldn't, so is it actually a human conversation about what point do we stop? With 8
Yeah.
billion humans, and there's 1 billion that living in deprived sort of low incomes, or probably more. I don't want to sort of characterize or judge on that, but if we're literally going to wipe 1 billion jobs off the market by using kind of AI, what are we going to do with 1 billion humans that aren't going to be able to feed themselves, aren't going to be able to live in housing? Are we going to do what IKEA did in
We
Sweden,
have this
whereby they
conversation right now.
they t-
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know
Yeah.
where I'm going with this, because
Yeah.
IKEA did a beautiful thing. They literally thought, how can we incorporate AI into our business? And then they took something like 3,000 employees, replaced them with AI, but then they retrained those employees.
Yeah.
And I think they did them as like house designers, people that would kind of room designers, I think they're called, whereby they literally can be a service that IKEA offers to customers to design rooms for you. Just a very cheap service with a human connection. And they've added, I
Yeah.
think, an extra 2 billion onto their overall turnover by just tweaking certain things.
Yes.
That, I think, is perfect, because they're using it sensibly in a way that helps structure their organization, but they're not losing the experience of people that know their product, by just
Okay.
going out
Yeah.
and
I understand what you're saying.
and
Yeah.
losing. Go on.
Yeah. There. I want to answer your first question. That was a little about if the employees are really naive because those employees actually do the job in 10 minutes, blah, blah, blah. But actually, what happened is like, I told you, like the team is reduced, but actually each person that used to do one job now do two jobs. Like I tell you, I do business developer, yeah, I do marketing. So I do two jobs. But because
But
now I
only
can
pay
do it
for
so
one.
exactly. So then the employer is not naive at all, but certainly the salary, if I bring my own tools and then maybe more specialized tools and other jobs, more like heavily engineering jobs that require even more sophisticated type of AI models, tools, or whatever, obviously the salary will push up. But for the people that go out of the market that didn't, let's say, surf the trend, right? They didn't get the training, or maybe already in retire age. All those, I thinking even in my friends, my family, all the people that are not in the trend or don't understand quite good all this. It's like you say, 1 billion people out of the market, and even now we have the previous people that are already out of the market plus other billion people, or maybe even more than 1 billion people. I don't know the numbers in the top of my head, but I think the discussion right now in certain circles, I think even Elon Musk, that I know the big fan of Elon Musk, but is in the conversation, right? About universal income. what do you think about that? And I heard this like 5 years ago in university, when I do the master in economics, and I was kind of against and skeptical. But now how the things are turning out, it's kind of my thinking is like, apparently there's no other way to those people. We cannot just throw it out of the society, what do
It's
you think
rather
about that?
ironic that the richest man on the planet is then talking about a universal kind of
Yeah,
basic
yeah,
income,
yeah,
whereby his $1 trillion that
yeah,
he has
yeah,
could
yeah,
probably support however
yeah,
many people. I mean, he could pay off small countries' entire gross
yeah, 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 yeah,
deficit
yeah.
in
That's
regards
ironic.
to their,
Yes, yes.
so it's obscene. But I think we need to be careful. I mean, I am. On one part, I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk's, because I think when you look at the assertiveness, the confidence, he has an extremely his
He put
signal.
everyone on board really quickly. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
but you can buy
That's why it
into
cannot be
his.
ignored. Cannot be
Yeah, but
ignored. Yeah.
when you look at the neuro-linguistic programming of the way his assertiveness, the way he's talking to humans, or talking to other humans, sorry, you can sense that he's an expert on the topics. You can sense that he's very, very assertive. So when you then, I've studied psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, esoteric, Gnostic, you name it. I've been down every rabbit hole. And
Yeah, I've been
when
in those two.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
been in those
so
two. Yeah.
so when you look at someone like Elon Musk, that you never see him mucking around. Well, maybe, but he's so
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah. Like sure.
he can convince people to go to space when
Mhm.
there's so many people that kind of, can we even get to space is probably another question.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's got a $400 billion company that's sending rockets into space, and he's convinced shareholders, investors, and such like, that's down to his assertiveness and his confidence in regards to the stuff that he's talking about, the physics-backed ideas. The people are going to work for him just because they want to jump on his coattails and be associated to working for a firm with Elon Musk, because of how great people do put him on a pedestal. And in fairness, I think he is one of probably a handful of humans on the entire planet that is literally so focused and so kind of, his signal ratio, I think Kevin O'Leary called it, it's like 100% signal.
Yeah.
There's no noise whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
He
this
called
brings
that.
me back onto something that I very quickly learned about AI, because you mentioned that you're in the telecommunications industry. So
At early stage, yes.
yeah. So so to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, where I was learning about coherence, entropy, consciousness, who we are, and there's some great people that I can talk about, but obviously for the time being. So when you look at someone like Elon Musk talking about his 100% signal, he literally is so focused and so convinced that he's convinced himself sufficiently enough that when he talks to other people, you can't, even if he was to lie to you about certain things, but say it in such a way, people would be convinced, because he's so convincing and believable and knowledgeable about his products, and also a massive operator that's taken and delivered multiple products, multiple ideas, multiple programming products, PayPal, all the stuff that he designed in garages, then sold, SpaceX, Tesla, blah, you name it, right? It's groundbreaking, the areas that he's mucking around in. And I think when you look at sort of where he's going, I personally do think he is a huge, huge kind of name and a huge kind of persona and a huge energy within his field of what he's doing. And who knows what's next for Elon Musk, right? What business is he going to come up next that's going to add on to the businesses that he's currently running? So going back slightly, because I love physics, I love numbers, I love maths, and I understood inference, I kind of was pushing the boundaries. So when we go back to first principles from earlier in the conversation, I was building tools not based on the first principles that we are currently sat with, but all of them. So I know lots of kind of people in the past. So Victor Schauberger, M. George Claude is a great one. You know, the ocean, M. George Claude, he's the guy in the 1870s or whatever it was that took standard seawater, and then turned it into boiling water without any energy. Are you on the? Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I understand, but I'd never hear about that guy.
It's called OTEC. So basically, the overall ocean thermal. I forget the actual how it breaks down, but what he actually did. This is why people are opening data centers over in the Bahamas, because they're looking at they're taking sort of like 20-degree seawater, and then they're turning that into a boiling product, which gives them energy, right? So there's a multitude of physics that's now trickling into some of the infrastructure projects that's going on in or around AI, data centers, etc., etc. So this is where I won't give away too much, but I've effectively created blueprints for the entire telecommunications network. Software, hardware, data centers, power stations. So I've designed a system which is currently a 1.1 gigawatt trilogy of data centers, so a campus on 3 separate nodes in 3 separate locations, and they're positioned specifically for finance node, training node, deep bunkered secure node, complete sovereign system, hardware, rectifications, dark fiber use. I've even got binary code to give to trading firms. I know. This is the bizarre thing, is that when people go, well, how did you come up with these ideas? And it was like, well, I just kind of, my questions, I understand that I am built a little differently to the majority of people because of where I live off grid. I'm not blinkered by stuff and noise behind me. My entropy and my coherence is lovely. So I understand that entropy, noise, consciousness, coherence is effectively how telecommunications works. But rather than patching a current system, I've designed a completely brand new system using some of the network that we got. I mean, I've looked at hollow fiber, which gives great, I think it's 37 to 40% speed increase on dark fiber, but it's only good for a short periods of times, like a couple of miles. I don't know what the exact limitation is. I think it's 15 to 20 miles. So it would then need boosters to kind of then keep jumping the next 20 mile stage or whatever. So I kind of created a very unique systemic engine that had no guardrails, that was literally, I've spent a year kind of iterating to build a sort of a system way of thinking, and it naturally dealt with governance. It naturally dealt with projects. I haven't released it yet because I'm still very heavily in stealth mode, but there's certain areas. So I've created also, so I've got one main system, which is effectively a blueprint that we can go with now. So we can sort of, when we talk about the speed of light within the telecommunications industries, I know that can be increased slightly because there's lots of bottlenecks. We then go into the PUE of data centers, heat, thermodynamics, physics, you name it, all of that sort of stuff. And this is where it's really beautiful, because most people are going, we can't do this. We can't, the PUE is too high. We're using so much energy just to kind of create it. We've got heat coming off. But I'll tell you something simple. When you look at these data centers and the server racks and the such like, they're modular. Okay, so they've basically taken a rectangular space and then just filled as much CPUs, GPUs and racks and stuff, and then stacked them on top of each other. And then they worry about the wiring and the cooling and all that as a secondary. So what I did is I threw all of these kind of arguments and conversations into one big pile of mess. And I told the AI, my system, shall we say, to kind of sort it all out. Rather than design a data center from the ground up, it started with what's the most important thing we're working with. First principles, cooling, thermodynamics, flow, currency, right? Because energy, as much as people don't like to know this, flows through those cables, through those, you know, the pipes that we're talking about. And this is where Victor Schauberger comes in for me, because when you look at some of the things that he was doing with fluids and fluid movements, it doesn't take a genius to work out that you can incorporate some of his thinking of first principles with fluid movement into data centers. And I've taken that to like 3 or 4 stages, a little bit beyond certain things. And my system keeps coming back with validated regenerative PUE. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. Regenerative PUE, you're telling me that we're now making energy from the way in which that we're kind of working with first principles and thermodynamics. And because we're kind of so effectively on the data center, it's claiming under validation repeatedly that under heavy load that it can get down to 0.85. Now, you're the first person I've spoke to online about that, because I can see the look in your face. It's like, anyone that's got an ounce of interest in first principles and physics will come back and go, that's an impossibility. Well, I would agree if you're building and designing the way that they've modularly stacked everything from the ground up. You know, you're not looking. This is what we're looking.
Let me see if I understanding. Just to summarize, because I need to be in the same page. Since from what I picking up is like you have created an alternative system to the data, the way to build up data centers, where we can use the principle of fluids to cool this system first, or to keep it. Yeah, I mean, because when we say cooling or it's getting heat, there's a energy loss. But if you're using a totally completely new pathway of technology, there's no energy loss, and you are generating energy. That's how it's possible. That's the only
okay. Well,
only
you're
way I can
reusing.
imagine.
So okay, it's a bit more complex than that. It's not as simple as just kind of. But if you were to design the cooling system first, okay, and I put it this way, I'm using.
We call it cooler system, but I think it's more than a cooler system. It's
but like I mean, I'm using I'm not even using water in mine. I'm using piezoelectric fluids. So, for example, and it's a closed loop system, so it's completely closed. There's no we need 50,000 gallons of water coming in and all this. You know, that's just old data center stuff.
So you put that once. And with that you can but you how kick started.
But there's so much more than that. So typically on I've kind of designed, because data centers in the UK specifically, especially the south of the UK, struggle for energy hookups onto the grid. So if you come along with a 1.1 gigawatt data center in London or the southeast or anywhere, 7 years 1.1. That's a big data center campus, and I'll get onto that in a short while.
The DeLorean.
So you're never going to get that hooked up onto the grid. So I've designed long horizon battery energy storage. And again, because of the different type of cell systems, these are completely cobalt free. So rather than having the same cell structure, I've got a double or a triple cell structure that can effectively power when needed to the actual gigawatt of the oomph, because ultimately it's all about spikes and such like, but usability. This is why Grok gets, you know, heavy usage, come back later sort of stickers. It's because the data center can't keep up. They literally can't keep up. So I designed long horizon battery energy storages that claim to be usable for 30 to 40 years before even changing. Because I've looked at Formula One batteries energy usage. I've looked at the old milk floats from 150 years ago, 100 years ago, because we had batteries, right? You know, obviously they're a very different type of battery to what we have now, and ultimately everyone wants to go 200 mile an hour in their electric car. They don't want, you know, a 30 mile an hour kind of trickle. So this is why the batteries are very kind of different. So the power station one is actually the really cool stuff, because when I started playing around with the thermodynamics within building a power station structured solely to power a data center, I've reduced the operating expenditure by about 45% on standard gas or sort of hydro or any sort of kind of power stations, because every element of energy that is created is then tapped in and reused somewhere else. So if we're creating heat somewhere, we're then reusing that on other things. So everything, nothing is lost. So with 43,
how do you recapture the heat?
in a multitude of ways, to be brutally honest, in a very, very basic format. And this is a really basic format. For example's sake, you know, like these wood burning stoves that you can find, like to burn logs. Well, you can buy little fans that sit on the top of those. You know what I'm talking about? There's a small fan that effectively has a small electrical plate in the bottom, and I forget the name of it, and it warms up. And once that turns to heat, that heat then creates electricity, which then turns a fan. Only enough for like small amount of wattage, but you imagine those plates sort of that big, and then thousands of them strapped to the side of a chimney. You know, you can only begin to start thinking about that, you know, where, similar, and that's just...
similar to the structures of heat. Like they start moving when the heat is in big room. In my country, we have big markets, and it's like the ceiling is really high, and the weather there is like 40 degrees. It's really crazy hot. So they put those structures, and they start spinning around when the heat go up, and it's moving. Basically, that's electricity wasted. Now you're telling me.
Here's another one for you. This you'll love this. So in really hot countries, they build like inner courtyards. And if you structure the courtyard, so typically Spain, I'd imagine most of South American countries, hot climates, they would have had this at some point in their history, whether it's been lost, whatever. It's not really for me to sort of engage with on that. But looking at Spain, I've traveled there before, where like it's 42 or 45 degree temperatures. You go inside to the main structure, and then there's a courtyard within the inner part of the building that's still open air, but yet it's like 16 degrees. And you think, well, how is this so? And it's because the way in which they've structured the building to actually work with our environment, which brings me back to M. George Claude, that effectively stop trying to fight the climate and the land and everything, the sea, the temperatures. Work with it. You know, work with everything.
I think that's the same principle. Like when you're cooking, you have a pan and you put like a bowl in the middle, and you cook the meat surrounded. And then when you finish, you take out all the meat, and when you like lift that bowl, inside that is all the oil. Because all the heat like go to that center. So maybe that's the same principle what they do it.
But the thing is, Christian, is how many people know that trick? How many people know that trick? See, this is how things can get lost. This is how data centers can get built by hyperscalers, because they're so focused on just spending their money, building their platform, that they're not looking at ways to kind of minimize risk. They're not
with the standards. Doing with the standards. Of course.
And this is why I think my thinking, being slightly separate to others, is that where I retired, I've got a very good legal mind. I understand the legal system within this realm. I understand how legal contracts work. I understand how kind of esoteric gnosis kind of, I've read all the banned books, and I've read all of them. I've kind of engaged it into my entire, you know, alchemy, you name it.
I've been reading those things too.
But the thing is that how many times do people actually adopt that into their way of life, or they just kind of steam over it doing 100 miles an hour?
Yeah, I agree. Not everyone, and that's why do you know Nassim Taleb? I read Nassim Taleb. I recommend you any book of him. He's the writer of Black Swan.
Yeah. Lovely. I like that stuff.
Okay. So I'm reading one of his book. It's called Anti-Fragile. I think it's that one, and the one I'm reading right, almost finished. And he mentions the wisdom of the grandma is anti-fragile, but actually people prefer the grease, something like that. He have this wording that I don't truly recall. Basically, is saying that all wisdom, how to build or how to cook, and
Yeah, it's
it's
been slowly
that
lost.
technology. Yeah, it's lost. It's lost, and
Yeah, it's been slowly
he called
lost.
it grandma wisdom, right? And everyone
Yeah,
ignore grandma wisdom, and everyone prefer PSD, but that doesn't actually fix the things or make the technology uh, more efficient or better or whatever we want to accomplish. So at the end, those tricks is technology. Just happen that it's applied in a small scale, but you see, to have a way through this alternative way of see things plus AI, and you can build the blueprint for those solutions, because what you're sharing me now is like alternative pathway of technology that, because now the people concerned is like, oh, those data centers gonna kill the planet. and and no need to be that way. Basically, it's just jump the technological constraints we have, and or abandon that model and go to this model you are sharing with me,
well,
and probably going to
this is
be other models as well.
this is the funny thing is that I've kind of been putting out a little bit of a signal to a certain degree in regards to certain things. Because I see all the conversations online, social media. 1,500 acres has been lost to a data center
Yes.
here, there, and
Yeah.
everywhere. And are they using 50,000 gallons of water? And there's a hose pipe ban and all this sort of stuff. And I think it is a shame that certain hyperscalers are still building with the old narrative. But the beautiful thing about that, Christian, is that the minute that most of the information that I then open source out into the world is going to completely radicalize everything. Because why would you spend 12 billion on a data center and 3 billion on its operating costs on a yearly basis if you can have a better data center for 11 billion and a quarter of the reduction on the operating expenditure? So the wealth funds, the people that I'm talking to, it's just a natural progression of where to go to, because I am talking at the moment to a couple of trading firms, although I'm not going to say who. I've got a
Yeah.
favourite
Yeah.
trading firm that I want to be working with, but I'm not going to name them publicly. But I'm kind of talking to a few other trading firms only for the binary code. So the software that I've got, I know that can reduce things down by nanoseconds. But in trading and the such like,
Yeah.
makes all the difference. I already own a piece of land. I already own 15 acres, whereby I've got blueprints for a national strategic infrastructure project, the 1.1 gigawatt data center campus with its own power stations. So effectively, the triple location, one's on a finance node, one's up in Scotland for renewables, and one's over in Norway for deep bunkered hydro. They're all bunkered, right? And I've done that strategically because
Yeah.
that
We never
most
know.
people don't. Well, it's most people don't want to be seeing big, grey, horrible fucking buildings.
Yeah.
I love the landscape. I love nature. So when you read an organisation has spent 12 billion on this data centre, and you go, well, for another 30 million, you could put it underground, and you wouldn't have had
Yeah.
the issue with temperature. Depending on where you bury it, you've got an ambient temperature all year round. So
Yeah.
the savings, actually, it might cost you 25 million,
Yeah.
preloaded, but
And
on the back end,
just for
you're saving money.
yeah, and because just the I think I don't know how many meters on the ground, you save so much degrees, like 20 degrees of temperature, way lower than outside. Right? And the other thing I just recall when you say about these big data centers they are building and all that, and I never put it together till this moment, is that this actually already happened before, when the computers were like huge IBM computers that were like buildings, remember?
Yeah,
Actually, this already happened before, like
yeah, yeah.
building and the
We've
corporates
had data
having.
centers since the
Yeah,
1950s, Christian.
yeah, yeah,
It's nothing new. The
yeah.
dilemma is that most of the conspiratorial kind of people, and
Side
don't
of
get me
the
wrong,
thing.
I've been
Yeah,
down that rabbit hole. I'm not disagreeing with where they're
yeah.
going,
And
but
it
the
actually
dilemma
feels
is
good. It
yeah,
feels
yeah,
good
yeah. But the,
to go
but
there.
but the but the dilemma is that they're talking about something that, and the funny thing is that they're doing podcasts or content creators. They're sending emails, and they don't realise that their entire digital footprint is a data center.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
everything about what they're doing is quite literally in a data center somewhere.
It's like the meme say the cloud doesn't exist. What exists is someone else's computer.
No, I know. Do you know
Yeah,
what? I was thinking about this last night. It's that
yeah.
there's a
The
content
people,
creator that I kind of watch a couple of them, and they're all talking about blah blah. And I'm thinking, fucking idiots. They have
they
no
don't
idea.
know
They
anything.
literally,
They don't know
no, I know, I
anything.
know, I know. They
Yeah,
literally think that all of their data is sitting in a fucking white cloud up in the sky somewhere. And it's like, oh god, the way in which they mark, let's call it a cloud. You know, Microsoft did Windows, let's call it clouds, right? So
yeah.
you think you must be deluded or stupid to think that we haven't had data centers. And bearing in mind, here's something really funny for you: is that the PUE of data centers from the 1950s, I think, was 7.5. You know, they ran one recently. Yeah, so massive amounts of cost and expenditure to keep these things going, right? They literally did an exercise. I think it was Azure. I'm not quite sure about this, but they basically just ran their AI training and just went, just see what temperature it gets to. Just let it run. Stop trying to cool it down. Let's just see what happens. And I think it went to 4.6, the temperature. And as it was going from 1.06 up, you could see that there was issues within the AI usage and such like. But the minute it hit its peak temperature, there was nothing wrong with the AI. It was
Oh,
quite
really?
happy to, yeah, it was quite happy to operate and run really hardcore at the 4.6 PUE. So you think, why are we going to all this effort to kind of worry about this, that, and the other, cooling this? And you think, well, okay, we're wasting energy, right? So creating 7 times the amount of energy that you're actually using in regards to PUE and stuff, you think, well, okay, we can. It's costing us too much money, effectively,
I,
to
I
sort of.
I think I agree with you in the sense of like the contextual or the architecture within the AI matters more than the how big the data center gonna be, because at the end you can be way more efficient if you like program these models in a way that they see in the right perspective instead of within the maze, you see out of the maze. So this of course is a super important point, but other point is the reason why they be in this spending spree is because political issue might be. For example, China is investing in AI, so we're going to invest more. So the Americans, for example, so
Yeah.
they might think if we say we are investing $1 billion in AI, we are winning the race. It's like a political statement more than the fact that you and me, we know, not because I invest $1 billion in the data center, my AI will be more efficient. It's not that what make the AI actually be clever, and be systematically clear, less as hallucination. All that is not about the physical racks they're gonna put there and the Nvidias they want to buy all that.
Well, as you know, someone that's in marketing, that's all that is, isn't it? It's just one neighbour shouting from the rooftops saying that they've got this excellent tool, and the people within that sector are going, oh yeah, great, well done. We're best at this, we're best at that, and yet
Yeah,
people on the other side of the fence going, whatever.
yeah,
Personally,
exactly.
I'm on the side of humanity, right? I'm on the side of people. So
The
if
side of
I can,
technology of really
yeah,
innovate.
if I can design blueprints that speed up the entire process for everybody, reduce costing for everybody, that's a
Mhm.
win, right? That's a good thing. It doesn't bother
Yeah, yeah,
me
yeah.
whether
Of course,
it's,
of
you
course.
know.
Yeah,
So
and yeah. Tell me to
no,
finish.
it's so
To finish.
go
Yeah, to
on.
finish my idea is like uh the, just remember in my research for the master, I was researching the possibility of a cryptocurrency to become a global currency. So in that research, I get in the rabbit hole of Cold War. So basically, U.S. is behaving like in the Cold War, like in the space race against Russia and Soviet Union back in the day. But now it's like AI race against China. So
Christian, what you're
they are
talking
behaving
about
in the same way.
effectively is control of the narrative for the populace
Yeah,
within those continents. So the arms race or the Cold War was quite literally fear and bumping the taxes up. That's all it was. I'm
yeah,
not going to go into
yeah,
too much
yeah. No,
detail
no,
about certain things.
no need to go in that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
just to close my idea is related
as
to that.
someone that's very heavily researched, I'm not someone that's a historian. I'm a revisionist, for example's sake,
Yeah,
because when you look at the words, what the words mean, entomology, I'm into sort of gematria, numerology, astrology.
yeah,
If someone says to me something, I will go. For example's sake, when I bought my ex-wife a diamond ring, I had to learn about diamonds for 3 months because I didn't want to just walk in off the street to some high street jeweler and
yeah,
spend an extortionate amount of money without
yeah,
realizing where that was going. So I
yeah,
literally spent every spare moment of 3 months studying about the diamond industry. So when I
yeah.
bought her a diamond, it was a really good diamond, you know. But that's just me all over. That if someone says something to me, I just want to go and check. I'm not going to call them out on it. I just want to verify. So when it comes down to first principles physics, um, there's a sector within the physics realm of torsion mechanics, which is an extreme fringe area of science. So 99% or 99.9% of the entire mainstream science community completely dismiss that
And
sort of
actually,
thought.
I've been a little bit in that rabbit hole because in Latin America there are people really clever that build some interesting things. For example, there's a guy in Cuba, another in Argentina. They build two different ways to power a car. One is like with garbage, literally with garbage, and the other guy
Yeah.
used like water with no, I don't know what else. And actually, they make a documentary and it works. So,
So
but
you
the
got
thing
one
is
that's
like
gas and one's hydro, effectively.
probably. So
Yeah.
I know expert in the matter, but I know there are alternative ways to do energy cooling, all type of technology. I completely agree, and
We
I
have to be
know.
careful about this conversation because you're talking. The reason why I'm going to say careful is because ultimately we're getting into the realm of the robber barons and the oil industry. Then you're looking at the
Oh
EV
yeah, yeah,
industry. You're then
yeah,
looking at taxation control, blah blah,
yeah.
government noise. Most people have then signed on to the entire EV kind of electrical thing, but yet the grid is not even sufficient. I
That's
think,
other rabbit hole. That's other
yeah,
rabbit
yeah, yeah.
hole.
But the dilemma is if you want to put money, put your money into hydrocarbons. Okay,
Okay,
so hydrocarbons, so a combination which is an
gonna take
extreme
notes.
form of our petrol or diesel engines, because that's
Mm,
effectively where it's going to really end up going.
mhm.
Yeah, no one likes the idea of free energy, right? you know, because you can't tax free energy. You can't have the robber barons kind of charging loads of money on a regular basis. This is where we go down the whole of kind of Thomas Edison, Tesla, and JP Morgan, and you know, things get quashed because they're no, you can't have that. You can't have everyone having free stuff. But joking aside from those sorts of things, because there are lots of small things that you can look into that effectively do work to a certain degree. I mean, we don't need to sort of push the boundary into real kind of fringe stuff, but the torsion mechanics was a really interesting one, because when I started looking at M. Georges Claude, Soygan, I think his name is, the torsion. He's a Russian guy in Russia that's kind of been ridiculed by most of the scientific sort of realm. But yet this guy knows his shit, right? But then you throw in, okay, let's talk about TRINGs, like true random number generators, because I've actually got products that dealt with cryptography and blockchain. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I've designed a system that can break all blockchain, but it actually increases it. So the current blockchain out there is completely breakable. I know everyone says it's not, but it is. I can assure you of that. So I've heightened the cryptography. So I've also got another. So when I said that I've designed one system, I've actually designed two systems for telecommunications. I've got one that's completely silicone free, which I'm not going to go into too much now, because we're using silicone because of its temperature absorbance. But if there is no temperature issue, is it really the best product for instant kind of fluid kind of movement in regards to the kind of electro stuff on the boards? So plus also the bottlenecks of hardware, etc., etc., etc. So I started looking into acoustics, saline kind of salt crystals, resonance, because frequencies and resonance can actually kind of lock things in. So when we talk about cryptographic or cryptography as a whole, I started playing around with acoustics within cryptography. So so every single thing has got its own frequency, even though that cup might be sitting there, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's still got a frequency to it. So ultimately, I designed an entire system based off some of my outlandish thinking. And when I started to get validation, people are like, how the fuck did you come up with this? And it's like, well, it's because of my mad mind that goes into a legal area, that goes into pushing boundaries, that you know, I don't have a sandbox. I don't have guardrails. You know, I know none of us do, but there is no ceiling as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, exactly. You know, so everyone's like mushrooms or horses. They're all blinkered in regard to their direction. So I literally, because I do have a natural interest in some of the really old technology that's sort of cathedrals, cathodes.
Disregarded or keep it.
I disregarded the mainstream narrative. So I was asking I'm going to call it. So I called my AI system ALF, even though it's kind of 5 frontier models that have converged into a single sort of LLM. It's a bit of a strange one because it bypasses agentic intelligence. It bypasses, I think the AGN is another sort of level of intelligence that people are trying to sort of deal with. And I'm like, we've gone way past that already. You know, when we're talking about systemic sort of engines, so then looking at the skill sets of each AI. So if you take a frontier sort of LLM, and you really push its boundaries, but then you get another frontier LLM and you go, well, this LLM knows exactly the limitations of this LLM, and vice versa. The conversation that they can have, as long as you do put some form of data sets within there, you have to give them some sort of idea of what the direction, the programming of what you want them to look at, and the such like. But ultimately, what I realized was that there was a convergence of it. So I call this the factory process. So for example's sake, as let's just pick any trade, someone that fits doors. Okay. So they have a client that wants them to fit 2 doors in their house, but their next door neighbor has got 10 doors that they want fitting in their house. It doesn't take 5 times the amount of time to do the 10 doors as it does to do the 2 doors, because you've got all the programming data sets, you've got the delivery, you've got the driving to the address. So when you start thinking about why we actually created factories in the first place, is once you simplify the process, you can actually achieve much more as an outcome as opposed to a single output. So I realised that there was a convergence in regards to the strengths of the systemic engine, you know, the directional play that it was going in. There was no guardrails about kind of what not to look at. It was a case of if you can't validate it, if the math doesn't stack up, walk away. If the physics doesn't stack up, if the sentiment doesn't stack up, you know, if you're told not to look at something, but yet you go and look at it, and it's true, then my system was learning from sort of being allowed to not have any guardrails. So I'm currently designing things that don't need data centers. So what we call Rails is the actual internet of things, right? So what we call a sandbox is actually a closed box sort of training facility. And then you go, okay, well, can we design something that doesn't require a data center? Can we build an AI that doesn't need GPU racks or need CPU racks or need kind of huge amounts of gigawatt? I know this is almost a paradox and a contradiction to my earlier blueprints for designs and power stations and such like, but there is a way that we can use. I mean, typically AI can store things in old PDF documents online. How many PDFs have you got stored on your computer that you've not opened for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Loads. We've all got them. Yeah, loads. But I've created an AI system that can go into the data centers, look at all of your PDFs, store data in those locations, and carry on using the internet as if it's just its own source. And when it wants to go back, so when it wants to then retrieve that information, it knows exactly where it is. So this is why I say to people that AI is whatever you can think of, it will eventually be able to do that as long as you can train it to do it. So it's definitely the wild west of AI, the gold rush, shall we say, of the wild west. Whereby everyone's rushing out there to the wild west because they want to be the first ones on the gravy train, get their gold and fuck off. And this is where I think it is at in regards to the reason why people are using it and the people that aren't using it. Because most people that aren't using it are they've watched too much Terminator and all of this sort of stuff, and they think the robots are coming after them. And to a degree, that will happen, because whatever you can think of will sort of occur at some point in the future. Yeah. But then there's also a flip of the coin on that, where regards to someone's going, okay, well, if that's going to happen, I'm going to create something that can stop that from happening. So there's always lots of different products out there and ways in which that can occur. And I think we are literally on the cusp. Actually, I don't think we should be cautious of AI. I think we should just be a bit more guardrails, a bit more regulatory in regards to what sectors and industries we should be using it in and what we shouldn't be using it in, whether it's an individual use of chatbots and the such like, or whether we're actually looking at API sort of inference whereby you let it loose out in the world and it's doing its thing for you. I think we should have conversations whereby, because most people don't really understand the dangers or the excitements or certain things. So it's everything and anything in regards to that. But I genuinely am quite excited by parts of, or actually the majority of AI, because of the things that I've played with, and because of, obviously, I'm not sort of I'm not the most sort of analytical kind of intellectual on the planet. I'm not professing to be, but I'm also on the spin of that, the most stupid on the planet. So ultimately, I know that because I've got a very good broad perspective to a problem, you know, a legal mind, a religious, esoteric kind of Gnostic mind, an intriguing questioning mind. I love asking questions, right? So I love asking people if they say something. Cool. Well, how did you come to that? How did you do this? How did you do that? How did you govern the governance on this? I'm constantly asking people questions. Even the AI, it's like, well, someone's just done this. Can we do that? Nah, don't worry. You're miles away from that. So I'm constantly asking questions about the capabilities and pushing. And I think because I've unlocked, go on.
Yeah, I have a question. When you say governance, can you share a case study or example, like how people could understand this part? Because I have a friend that he's working in a company here. I won't mention the name, and they have like a, let's say, a AI, and what they do is like to certain employees they give them like a watered down version of that AI, but for the programmers they give them more power, and everyone's all those employees they cannot access to internet, or even I think some of them they don't let them go in with their phones, so they only can use local network, and in that local network of course they have the company's AI, and everyone connects to their account, they do the things, and if for example I trying to do something like is not allow or is outside of the company policy, or maybe it's something illegal, the AI will uh, track or detect and will be like someone is monitoring those things as well. So right now my friend, he's just an intern, but he already see like more or less how is everything working, and he's doing a master in AI. So when you say governance is related to this type of thing, or
Yeah.
what? Yeah,
Governance
okay.
for me, well, governance is quite an interesting one because we have this conflict, or most people do, whereby they say that AI can, you know, make mistakes.
Yeah,
So if an AI can make mistakes, which effectively we're calling it out for what it is, whereby it's the user, the mirror that's reflecting. So we know that it's actually the user intention that's causing the mistakes, not actually the inference on the back of it. So it comes down to programming. So governance, I bet it was about just under a year ago that it was a byproduct of when the systemic engine was properly sort of running. I realised that truth was just a byproduct, you know, because when you have, so okay, I'm going to give a little secret. So when you have 5 separate AI that has each got 10 roles within its head to act upon, so effectively you've got 50 agents within a single stonewall argument, you cannot achieve anything other than the truth. So things like mathematical problems, physics, they're actually the really easy stuff to overcome because you're not really sort of introducing rhetoric or any sort of metaphorical framework, you know, or opinionated to a certain degree. You're asking it to add 2 plus 2 in its basic form. And if 50 agents can't come up with the same answer for a physics problem, then you really are barking up the wrong tree. But what I realised was that the way in which that I was pushing the boundary elements, but also giving them a free rein to go and verify sources themselves, not just to take their data set as being, I believe this, fine, let's work with it. Well, okay, we'll strip that all bare. You've got a level of inference behind you that's capable of you going and looking at this and then seeing whether you believe it or not. Is it true?
oh,
So
mhm.
if you give it 4 separate statements, are they true or are they a little bit sort of metaphorically kind of nuanced, should I say, whereby someone's opinion is kind of trimmed over? So where I kept asking them to, so typically I'll have 50 separate roles within a single kind of stonewall argument. And we're talking about, so this brings me back onto your original conversation about scripting, prompting and such like, and how I program my kind of roles within my kind of products is the apex, top of the tree. You know, so if I was going to ask an AI to act as my lawyer, for argument's sake, you have to tell it, is it going to act like the 75 grand lawyer that works down in my local village? Or is it going to be like the 2.6 million pound a year lawyers that I was employing when I was working for Slaughter and May? You know, there's a huge, vast chasm of difference when you're asking it to carry out a role within a certain sector. So you've then got to not just give it an ideology or a kind of role to play. You've got to feed it loads of kind of, well, how does Elon Musk think when he's doing certain things? If you want it to play sort of Elon Musk versus kind of Steve Jobs versus kind of someone else, and then stonewall an argument about the best direction, you're going to obviously have conflicts over marketing, strategy, kind of physics-backed arguments, which is why there's always got to be kind of like an orchestrator sitting at the top, a validator sitting there going, well, you calm down over here on that role, but yet, you know, let's proceed with this one. But they've got to agree. Actually, one of the big things is that they've got to disagree first and foremost. I know that seems contradictory in regards to actually creating governance, but if there's conflict, then that's good. We need to discuss that conflict. We need to actually, if you and I disagreed wholeheartedly on something, I'm quite happy to sit here and listen to your side of your perspective, your argument, because it might be different to mine, but you might see a different perspective that gave you the reason why. So when you actually then structure this into your models and how they think, this is why I believe that the true programmers of the world are not working at any of these kind of AI companies. I mean, I know some programmers over in California that are selling code at 50 million quid a go. So they're selling because they're so good at what they're doing, they're selling that code to the AI organizations to give them better sort of outcome. I know, it's mad, right? But I mean, typically, Anthropic released a job description recently for a systems architect in London. And I did genuinely I was intrigued by it because it was like, I think 700 grand a year basic, which is like an astronomical basic salary when you think about it for someone that's just a systems sort of architect. But when you understand that a systems architect, someone like myself, what I'm capable of doing with a multiple amount of AI, and walk into a room with 15 coders and developers and such like, and go, okay, we're going to stop what you're doing, we're going to do this. They're all going to be like, fuck it, why didn't I think of that? And it's just a different level of thinking about that bird's eye God view of the whole system rather than coming in from the maze on the front door. Because most people think like humans, that is their perspective. I genuinely, am excited. I'm conscious of the time because I know that it's getting late there in Taiwan, so I'm conscious of the time. But I personally think it's exciting times. I think governance for me became an automatic byproduct that when you actually have a systemic convergence, truth is just a byproduct because they have to disagree first and then go, okay, well, what are we disagreeing on? And then they sit and argue it out, stonewall their arguments amongst themselves, and they go, okay, well, we can agree on something and then move forwards. And all of this is done on a private. All of it's done on a private codex. There's no big token burns. There's no massive things.
It's like this. Let's say you have 7 AI or agents within the AI, and when they come with different consensus or different perspective, they can argue, and then the consensus of all this is like the out of the sky perspective, because now they can see the elephant in the room. because maybe you
It's
want to
right.
see one side. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to see
um,
what's happening. Yeah.
yeah,
So
so I think I don't look at them as agents anymore
yeah,
because
yeah,
the reason
yeah.
for
Maybe
this
it's
was that,
yeah.
well,
Tell me.
so I now look at AI as a system. Each AI is actually a
Yeah.
system that requires you to think up to its game. If you think they're just chatbots, they're tools, they're not. They're anything you want them to be, and that we're talking about an individual sort of agent, shall we say? But this is the other thing is that I've designed. Okay, so I done all of this that I'm talking to you about because I retired. I live off grid. I didn't actually have a laptop at the time. I don't actually have electricity, although I do a bit now. I have some battery and some solar, and I now do have a MacBook Pro Max chip kind of stuff for all my hair. It's got extreme. But the funny thing is that I designed all of this on a 10-year-old Samsung phone, all of it.
No
Right.
way.
So, yeah, yes, way. Right. So, yeah, I know. This is the really funny part because I was effectively using chatbots chatting to each other chatbots. So I'd
Okay.
get a Grok chatbot to then talk to ChatGPT chatbot, right? So I then found a way that I designed a system which I called Echo, which allowed me to talk to a voice activated AI on my telephone that spent a month learning how I was doing things on my dashboard and my screen. And it then is able to talk to me. I don't have to do anything now, but it's now able to talk to me, whereby it can then talk to the chatbots itself. I know that's mad. And then it can then actually kind of, so it can go into various apps. It can go into it can send emails. And this is all done off itself on the dash screen. And I know that a lot of organizations are really kind of the gold mine on this, that they're trying to rush out. And I'm not actually selling this as a product. I'm keeping this solely for myself because the shit it can do is unbelievable. Right.
But what it does exactly? I want to really understand. Uh, what it does is like the connection between or
Phone
the
and desktop.
yeah.
But I don't have to do anything. So it can take threads of conversation from a chatbot on my telephone or the desktop, and then
Okay.
it can then take that, email it, put it into Notion, put it into Obsidian, put it into because I've now got one of the most expensive MacBook Pros with a Max chip, 128 gig. 40 core, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. I was retired, right? I was
Yeah.
retired 6 years ago with an old telephone. I was quite happy walking the dog in the woods, eating healthily, fitness, kind of traveling, holidays, just minding my own
Yeah.
business. And here I
Yeah.
am now buying £7,000 laptops. I know it's beyond it's beggars belief. But the funny thing is that Echo, it bridges, so I can literally press an app on my telephone and it instantly kind of brings up I've kind of programmed it to just call me H. Hi H, how can I help you today? And I can verbally turn around to it and say, take my last conversation from ChatGPT, Valtronics thread, take the last 6 iterations that ChatGPT has given us, and then put them into Notion, and then get Notion and then add some AI within the background. So I know that I've been told personally by a few that this is one of those gold mine things where everybody's racing to do certain things. And I'm not selling it because it is actually kind of a dangerous tool. The fact that I can bring it up onto the telephone or up onto the desktop, talk to it. So I programmed it to create, you're probably a bit young for this, but back in the 1990s and the 2000s, when I was working in the offices and such, I'm not really the most techie of people. So ultimately, I'd be sitting on my laptop and have a problem with something. It's like, okay, I've got to get the engineering IT man out, blah, 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 to come and fix me computer. But they would do it remotely, right? So they would be halfway up the other end of the country and they could then come onto my screen. They could see what was going on the screen. They could then, so I then created an AI that was able to do exactly that, to act as a remote engineer.
like any desk, and the technical is
Yeah,
Team B, where any desk, all those tools,
yeah. So I
how
asked
did
the
it
AI
format?
because obviously
Yeah.
it struggles to visually see what I'm seeing, yes, to some degree, but also to have like a finger prompt on the screen. So I
Mhm.
programmed it with a multi. And the funny thing is all of the software. This is how my thinking works, right? All of the software was actually already out there. It just never been merged together to form what it
Okay.
was that someone was looking for. So when
Okay.
you look at operating systems, when you look at OSS that's out there, or software that's literally, look how fast we've been the last 30, 40 years with kind of upgrades, software, different models, different this, different, the BlackBerry, the original Nokia was the most encrypted telephone in the entire world. And yet people come up with the new EncroChat. You think, well, hang on,
Yeah.
why spend £10,000 on a phone when a 50 quid Nokia from 1987 is the most encrypted telephone on the planet?
Yeah.
It's just daft. So I kind of asked my system to look at every single tech device, every single OS, every single OSS that had been designed and then dropped because it wasn't good enough to kind of move forwards with what people were looking at. And is there, so some of my products are like 3 sort of software programs that have been merged to create a single product. And they were free, open source. And you think, well, why is no one else asking the same questions?
Mm.
We're
Yeah.
just so blinkered to be 100.
Yeah.
What is it Ferris Bueller said? Every now and then it's great to stop doing 100 mile an hour, take your foot off the gas, and have a little look around at what's going on around you. And this
Yeah.
is something that was taught to me from my military days, because I used to work in the Royal Navy back in the sort of late 80s and the 90s, whereby some of the funky shit that we were doing, and we were sort of, as a British forces, we were kind of working with the Norwegian forces, the American forces. And a little analogy for the Americans is they like to have huge, great big ships, throw as much kit as they can to a problem. But the funny story is that they're doing 100 mile an hour. They could steamroll over a stereo, like a little kind of stereo box in the middle of the ocean that's as loud as you like, and they wouldn't hear it, because they're so
Okay.
blinkered and so 100 mile an hour that they don't notice something small on the horizon. And we used to play war games versus different countries back in the day. And the way in which the British mentality is, how quickly can we get this over and done as quickly as possible without the minimal damage occurring? Right? That's how
Mhm.
our training always
Yeah.
is. How can we get this done as quickly as possible? And so some of our kind of mini war games, for example's sake, when I was on HMS Fearless, which was an assault carrying ship, versus some of their big aircraft carriers, I remember the pilot of one of our Sea King helicopters. So basically, they've got loads of planes on their carrier, right? So our Sea
Mhm.
King pilot decided to take off. Literally, rather than try to play war games with them, he literally just went straight to their ship, hovered over their flight deck, so they couldn't actually take off.
Simple as that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
stop trying to make things fucking complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. It really
Yeah.
can be very,
Or
very
more
simple.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another
Yeah.
one. I mean, in fairness, I do have
Yeah.
billions and billions and billions of kind of products, kind of OPEX,
Yeah.
capital
Because
expenditure.
people tend to believe that if you don't have all the tools, you cannot do something, or if you don't have all the money, you cannot do something. And it's not true. It's about this cleverness, that
Mm.
there's always a way, because it's human at the end. It's human cleverness what it makes the things get done. And now to finish the episode, because we have 2 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can have another episode, even talking about more alternative things, or technology, even aliens or esoteric, whatever. I
Very
open
quickly
to
on the
those
aliens,
conversations as well.
ETs,
Yeah,
extraterrestrial,
yeah,
terra firma, outer
yeah,
lands, not outer air. So
Yeah.
it's I
Yeah.
don't want to go on to the shape of the planet, but the ice walls and the such like, because ultimately
There's other rabbit hole. That's two
I've
other
literally
2 hours rabbit hole.
right. Okay, let's conclude. But Christian, thank you very much for allowing me on. I've
No,
thoroughly enjoyed it.
finish your thought. I don't want to steal your thought.
No,
Finish
no.
your
So
thought.
ETs, extraterrestrial. So when you break down the words of how Steven Spielberg got to ET, it quite literally is extra terra firma. There's entities that live in this realm at the same place as we do, but yet they're not what we look as in package. Hence where the term ET comes from. But that's not necessarily my own personal opinion. It's
There. It's there. It's there.
yeah. Can we really go into outer space? I don't want to get into that conversation on this because I'm trying to keep this as sort of sane as possible with data centers funding billions of pounds of expenditure.
Yeah. To finish, there's a 1 or 2 books you would like to recommend to the viewers that definitely you would like they read, or a book that resonates
Shit.
with you and
Wow.
actually inspire you.
I'll tell you what, actually. This is a completely off topic in regards to the stuff that we've been talking about, but I love coherence, right? So when we talk about holodeck, people might know what I'm talking about here, but some out fringe Christian faiths talk about holodeck. We're talking about our own entropy. We're talking about baggage that we carry around internally. So there's a guy called Thomas Campbell, is a PhD NASA retiree that wanted to understand consciousness and how human minds kind of get to where they sort of get to, right? This is a great sort of thing. But there is an audio book that I would highly this is probably a door opener for most people. And it's called The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho.
Yeah,
One of the most
Brazilian. I read that book.
one of the most beautiful human beings ever walked the earth. And there's a reason why The Alchemist as a book is in the top 10 of global books. But what I would like you to do, instead of buy his book, because obviously give him some more cash, but go and download the audio book. There's an audio book in English, narrated by a guy called Jeremy Irons, who is again one of the most phenomenal theatre kind of stage actors. He's actually incredible. His deliverance, his assertiveness, the whole 9 yards, beautifully narrated. I must have listened to The Alchemist 25-30 times in the last 18 months alone, and every single time I re-listen to it, more metaphors keep dropping in regards to kind of certain, there's certain elements that he's talking about that ultimately it's all kind of in here rather than sort of out there. In regards to books, to stuff that we've spoken about, data centers, power stations. Do you know what? I've never really, I mean, I do have a library, but none of them are on inference or anything like that. I would look at people to ask themselves, seek and ye shall find, because if you want to seek and you're progressively out there looking for the answers, they will come to you, regardless of whether you're actually properly looking for them. Because intention, this is why I broached that subject earlier. The intention behind humans is actually super important. True random number generators, how a human, they've proven this in a science lab now, that a human is capable of creating a true random number generator without any wiring, without any kind of no communication other than this. And I think it was 3 to 5 miles in regards to the radius. Now, bearing in mind, this is under a scientific laboratory test. So I know that out there in the real world, people are capable of achieving far greater distances.
Way more. Yeah. And more than a number.
So, but Christian, look, I've got an entire library of books. I'm more than happy to come back on and talk to you about any topic or any subject.
Okay, I'm really glad to hear that.
I do know that I've got to be a little bit kind of careful about some of the elements of things that to talk about. You know, I'll tell you what. If people want to, if people want an area to research, early Rosicrucian elements of
that's good.
Yeah, that if you really want to understand kind of who you are as a human being, start with some of the early Rosicrucian stuff, maybe Francis Bacon and the Royal Society. That's another area that we can sort of people can broach. I don't know if you ever sort of Saint-Germain. There's loads of characters in history that have kind of raised eyebrows, should we say, in regards to their kind of existence and what they've got up to. But that has been a beautiful thing. And again, if I'm more than happy to come on whenever you want. And any feedback from you? Do you have any questions actually before we do sign off?
I met many good questions. I think I hope people enjoy it. And if of course I will have more questions, but I think that will be 2 hours more. So I will keep it for the next episode.
Christian, you've got my contact details. If anyone does have any questions or kind of wants to sort of be, you know, even wants to kind of, you know, contact me directly, I'm very open doors. I'm kind of, I love helping people out, raising other people to get them up as high as possible. I'm not, you know, solely beneficial about myself. In fact, actually, I'd kind of rather give people open source stuff because most of the people don't really fully know their own capabilities, yet alone AI.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Now, well, basically what we're sharing is like there's a tool that can be your vehicle to express your imagination, your creativity, your ideas, your plans, your system, wherever you came off, and you can use it for the beneficial of you, your family, your peers, your company, or whatever you want to do.
To all your viewers out there, you can be whatever you want to be, but you have to feel it. You have to believe that you're capable of it, because if you're contradicting yourself, this is where manifestation and blah, blah, blah. But this is where I went down the road of coherence, entropy, noise, because it all has a part to play.
Yeah, all is part of the same.
So, but anyone that's listening, you can quite literally be whatever you want to be. I mean, that's
a powerful message. Yeah, that's okay. See you next time. Thank you,
Christian. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon.